Hello everyone, this is Bob Browner recording an update on the HPV vaccination measure for Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's some questions about this which I think are very important for us to kind of understand the distinctions for, and the way I explain it is the difference between a report for quality improvement versus a report for compliance. One way to kind of think of it, I like this old Middle Eastern proverb that you can't fatten a cow by weighing it. And that's kind of what the HEDIS type measurement is for. It's weighing the cow, but it's not really feeding the cow. Kind of like cow analogies because that's kind of how I grew up. This is me at the Cheyenne County Fair with the heifer I was showing that year when I was 15. So I like cow analogies partly for that. But the way to think of this is feeding the cow versus weighing the cow. And so us providing really good medical care, that's feeding the cow. That's what we're focused on. And if we do a good job at that, by the time we hit the end of the year and report back to people there are various ways they want us to report, no matter how goofy, when we go to weigh the cow, we'll be just fine because we fed the cow properly all year long. So good medical care, and you'll do just fine on the measures. The other thing is that the compliance reports are often what are defined as calendar reports, and you don't want to define your quality numbers that way, though. So, for example, what happens is that Blue Cross Blue Shield says, "How did you do in this contract year?" And then they just move on. And they say, "How did you do in this contract year?" And the same goes for HRSA UDS reporting for the Federal Qualified Health Centers, and some EHRs, unfortunately, also set up their quality reporting to only look at the calendar year. The problem with only looking at a calendar year's worth of patients is that you're looking for people who didn't get stuff done. Well, the reason they didn't get stuff done is because they weren't in this calendar year frequently. So sometimes this patient that needs a colonoscopy or an HPV vaccination, depending on your population, last saw you here or here. And so if your report only looks at this calendar year, you're missing those exception reports. So when you do quality improvement reports, you really want to look at all of your patients if possible, so all active patients. That's sometimes a challenge though, because to take care of all active patients, you need a really good system of inactivating patients who are no longer yours, and many clinics don't have that set up. So some will define their active population as unique patients seen in the last 24 months. So they develop this rolling 24-month way of running numbers. This is a better way for quality improvement reports, and if you do a good job here, when you do the compliance report, like the HEDIS number for Blue Cross or Medicare or whatever, you'll be fine when you go to run this report at the end of the year. So feed the cow here, then when you weigh the cow, you'll be just fine. So for HPV vaccination for this project, we last year decided we'd focus on 12 to 13-year-olds because that's when they've come in for the 7th grade physical. It's an ideal time to get them because you know they're all coming in for the 7th grade physical. And so we defined it that way. But now that we've got some new things happening, we may need to revise our strategy, and that's just the way you need to do with quality improvement. This is an iterative process. You don't define it once and never go back to it. Another thing that's changing, of course, one is that Blue Cross Blue Shield is measuring differently. So if you look at how it's actually written out, they're only measuring kids who turn 13 during the calendar year here, and they're only counting vaccines given before the kid turned 13. So the way the Blue Cross runs it, if you have this 13-year-old and they got the first vaccine at 12 years, 7 months, and now they come in for the follow-up and they're 13 years, 2 months, they're actually not going to meet the measure. It's still good Medicare care. The kid's still vaccinated. Don't stress, don't sweat that. And the target honestly is set pretty low. It's set at 16 and 18%, 16 for 1 point, 18% for 2 points. I'm not worried about us meeting this by the end of the year, but we may have to change some strategy a little bit to deal with that. There's also some other reasons to consider changing our focus, and that the CDC has come out and said that all kids who are 11 or 12 years old should get 2 shots. So the CDC has said 11 to 12 is the ideal time to have this done by, but as you know, you can give it as early as age 9. The rationale for CDC doing this is that the studies are showing that the vaccine has a better immune response at younger ages. So they want the kids vaccinated between 9 and 13 because it's a better immune response. And so that's ideal care. Doesn't mean you still don't focus on getting the 14-year-old vaccinated. It's just that if you had your choice, you really want it to happen in the 9 to 13-year-old age range. So, consequently, I think in addition to the 7th grade school physical, we need to start focusing more and more on those 9 and 10 and 11-year-old well child checks, and then also catching kids as they come in. Also, we're hearing back from some folks that I think the sales pitch seems to be more effective at younger ages because parents are still a little bit in that multiple vaccination mode and they just haven't even thought about sex in their kids yet. So sometimes that, from a timing standpoint, a psychology standpoint, the parents may more likely say yes at 9, 10, and 11 also. So the net result is we need to try to change our strategy and probably move a little earlier. And again, quality improvement, like lots of models, it's an iterative, cyclical thing. You update as you go and learn as you go. So we may change this measure in the future, but still you have to run it this way for your CME and your Part 4 maintenance of board certification. The other thing is think about how you prioritize. We all want to do everything, but we only have limited time and resources. We want to follow up on all our patients, but likely because of the Blue Cross measure, we should prioritize. And so those kids are going to turn 13 next year. Maybe you should pull a list of those 12-year-olds first. Success is sometimes using limited time and resources most effectively. And so what we may have, let's say there's 500 kids that need a vaccine, but call the 12 the 50 12-year-olds first, from a timing standpoint. And then in the meantime, put in the processes in place so that kids get vaccinated maybe every time you come to their clinic. So a lot of clinics have a way to have either a reminder or a pop-up note or something. So as soon as patients check in the front desk or even during scheduling the clinic, it'll say, you can see, oh, this patient needs a second HPV. Can we go ahead and give that while you're there? Or when the nurse rooms the patient, can she say, hey, can we go ahead and give you this vaccine now and get that done before you get the doc in the room? As some people know, that vaccination projects usually are best done when you frankly taking it mostly out of the physician's hands and put it in charge of the nursing staff. So summary, focus on the right strategy for taking best care of your patients first or feeding the cow. And if you do that, you'll just be fine when you go to weigh the cow at the end of the year. Any questions, let me know. Thanks.